position, and in fact we're going to bring that to the front of the agenda to manage our capacity this evening. But I'll go through the agenda as published to start with. So the first item on tonight's agenda is apologies. Have we got any apologies? There we are, speaking to that one.
Sorry, none to report, Chairman, all present.
Thank you. So the next item is members' interest. Do any members need to declare any pecuniary or other registrable or non-registrable interests? Councillor Sanderson.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening. I will need to declare an interest in item 3 and specifically 3.7 because it makes reference to the Cromwell Museum and work with Huntingdon Town Council, of which I am a member. I'm not sure if I should leave a room for that for the whole of that agenda item or just for 3.7.
I'm just going to take some advice.
Yeah, through you, Chair. I think I'd given advice to Councillor Sanderson already in terms of, because it is referenced, so it's all about perception. So if we are referring to discussions that involve the Town Council, you're there wearing your Town Council hat. So it's obviously your interest, it's within your discretion, but my advice would be to declare and leave the room. Yeah.
I will do so.
Thank you. For full transparency, I'm a member of the English Civil War Society. However, I don't have a direct connection to the Cromwell Museum, but I don't want somebody to later say that I didn't make a declaration I should have done, because it is on my declaration of interests. Was that a signal from this side of the room? Councillor Pitt.
Thank you, Chair. So in a similar vein, I'm a member of St Neots Town Council. There is reference to the Priory Centre, which is a building run by the Town Council. So I know there's not a decision due on that, but again, take advice on how best to proceed.
Thank you. Mrs Jablonska?
Again, through you, Chair, when we get to that item, I think if there's it depends on the decision to be taken in relation to that item, I think,
I believe this evening it's to note, so the answer is you can probably stay. It's when we have to make a decision that we have a slightly different position. Any other interest to declare this evening? No? Okay, thank you very much.
Chair, if I may, we omitted the minutes. We want to go back to item 1, the minutes.
Thank you very much. So we did, in fact, omit the minutes. How did I manage that? I'm glad you're here with me tonight to make sure that I keep on track. So we have the minutes from the meeting on the 18th of June. You've all had a copy of these. Are you content that I sign them as a correct record of the meeting? Can I just have a show of hands for those watching at home? Thank you very much. I shall just give a signature. Thank you very much. Do you need me to initial anything? Or are we okay? Fabulous, thank you. Right, then that moves us on to what would have been a urgent late item, and in fact we're going to take it as the first item, and then we will resume the agenda at the published item 3 afterwards. So this is the item on the Fens and Lincolnshire Reservoirs consultation. So I have a statement I need to read in order to manage the process. So I need to report. I propose to admit the following item as a matter of urgency in accordance with the section 100B 4B of the Local Government Act 1972, in view of the fact that the consultation will close prior to the next scheduled meeting of Cabinet. As this matter is a key decision which has not previously been published on the notice of key executive decisions, the approval of the chair of the Overview and Scrutiny Panel, Performance and Growth, has been obtained. As it's an urgent item, it will be exempt from call-in provisions. Are you content that we proceed on that basis? Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Wakeford, is this you of one of the many items that we have you down for this evening? In which case I'm going to hand over to you.
It is, and I can only apologise in advance, but on this one, it's not only my voice you're going to be listening to, at least. Very grateful to our Chief Planning Officer, Clara, joining us this evening. So this is a paper on the Fens and Links Reservoirs project. So this is Anglia Water working with Cambridge Water, and they're in a pre-application stage of development consent orders for 2 reservoirs, the Fens Reservoir and the Links Reservoir, associated with infrastructure challenges in Cambridgeshire in particular, and the east of England more widely around water that colleagues will know about extremely well, though we are not at the most acute end of them in Huntingdonshire, mercifully. There is a second non-statutory consultation open at the moment. We don't have to submit a response as part of that. There will be a statutory consultation we're expecting in the middle of next year, which I think we would expect to be submitting to anyway. But our reflection is that it would be helpful to submit a response on behalf of the district, or at least to have the option to do so as part of the non-statutory consultation underway at the moment. As was referenced in the statement that the leader just read, there isn't time for us to work through the normal pre-scrutiny process to do that. So we have come straight to Cabinet to seek delegation in order to make a consultation response and other similar responses that might be necessary in the same sort of context. It is unusual in terms of how we work, not having had that pre-decision scrutiny, but of course it's not unusual in terms of how councils operate more widely, given post-decision scrutiny is sort of common anyway in some areas. So hopefully this is not a controversial use of our special powers. Clara is kindly able to unpack in a little bit more detail what this is about and speak to the paper. So I will hand to her now, if I may. Thanks.
Thank you and good evening, members. Just building on the very helpful summary that Councillor Wakeford has set out, by way of background, the first consultation centred primarily on the broad locations of where new reservoirs would be required. At that time, our main focus was that of the Fens Reservoir, and then more recently it became apparent to us that the Lincolnshire Reservoir, that we tend to call the Links Reservoir, will come into our district and connect in at Chesterton. In this round of consultation, there have been conversations with Anglian Water to date. They have confirmed that they have been engaging on a local level as well with the directly impacted parishes. And importantly, as Councillor Wakeford has identified, there will be a further non-statutory consultation next year ahead of the formal submission of the development consent order for a nationally strategic infrastructure project that you quite often hear us call NSIPs. As the report identifies, NSIPs are considered by government through the Planning Inspectorate, essentially large-scale planning applications, and our role will be that of a technical consultee into that process. And of course, parishes and any local representations will be able to make direct representation to the Inspectorate at that time. For clarity, we have not started work on the environmental impact assessment in relation to this. For now, the focus is on technical input, looking at potential routing of infrastructure between the reservoirs. As we start to then narrow what the routing will look like, that will then segue into the preparation of the environmental impact assessment, and we will then consider that in a regulatory fashion and provide that feedback directly into the development consent order process itself. I will pause there, but hopefully that gives you comfort that there are future opportunities to engage. We do absolutely understand the unfortunate circumstance that meant that we were unable to take this through scrutiny first, in part because of the calling of the election that did interfere with the consultation timescales. But given that there will be a further consultation next summer, clearly, depending on feedback from Cabinet and clearly any other members who wish to give us feedback, there are opportunities to continue engagement with Anglian Water as further evidence emerges. Thank you.
Yep, Mrs. Sachs. Thank you, Leader. I think just reflecting, it is. Clara's just used the word unfortunate not to have been scrutiny, but that is not, again, just for clarity, pre-scrutiny is not a legal requirement, and decision-making can take place at executive without having pre-scrutinised. It is about the needs of the service, the needs of the community, and the urgency is what the overriding issues. It's not a discourtesy to our scrutiny colleagues. It is simply, as Clara has said, around the general election timescales. So I just want to make that point in terms of it is unfortunate, but the legislation is not all everything is pre-scrutiny, and it is not a disrespect either. It is the needs of the what must be done procedurally to ensure that we're able to submit and represent for our communities in the best way possible. Thank you for that clarification. That's really helpful. So I'm quite happy to stop in just a moment and take some questions, but can I remind you of the recommendations, because that might also help you for framing your questions. So the recommendations that I'm going to come to in a moment will be around authorising the Chief Planning Officer with the leader of Economy, Regeneration and Housing to prepare and submit the comments, and then to delegate authority to the Chief Planning Officer to take all associated actions necessary in the interest of efficient and timely conduct of the Council's compliance over this matter. So I'm just going to pause. Are there any comments or questions at this stage that anybody wishes to raise? Councillor Davenport-Ray?
Yes, two topics I wanted to raise on this one. They're a bit general, but some are specific to this site we're talking about as well. Anglian Water is a private company. And for the year ending 2023, they paid out 91 million pounds in dividends. Those dividends were paid out to their shareholders. 75% of their shareholders are private pension funds, the largest of which is a Canadian pension fund. So I'm very happy to see Anglian Water reinvesting on the scale of these two reservoirs here this year, last year, not paying out dividends. That's a good trend. But I think we have to be realistic. The decisions of this private company are focused on the best interests and objectives of those majority holding pension funds. Until our water companies like Anglian Water are brought into public ownership, the needs and benefits of local people will always come second to their shareholders. Specifically on the site under discussion here near Chatteris, I think we also need to view projects of this type in the wider context, especially in terms of climate change. Projections of sea level rise in our region are particularly worrying. There are optimistic projections, there are pessimistic projections, but the moderate projections show a frankly shocking impact on our landscape. From Sawtree to Ramsey and Whittlesea to Warboys, if our climate continues on its current trajectory, our communities will quite literally be underwater by 2050. Places like Chatteris will return to literally islands like they were in medieval times. So larger infrastructure projects like this are really simply just a plaster on a much wider root problem. And the way we use water today, the amount of water that each person uses, all needs really serious consideration. We really can't simply rely on infrastructure problems to solve the impacts of climate change. We personally all have to take action to change our own behavior as well. So I'm very happy to support us responding to the consultation, and I'm hoping that some of those thoughts might be echoed in the response.
Thank you very much, Councillor Davenport-Ray, and I appreciate those sentiments greatly. I'm from the chair, I'm going to say one of the conversations that I've been having with people is we suffer from not enough water in some parts of Cambridgeshire and far too much potentially in others. There has to be a way that we can harness that natural resource that we have better. I very much hope that the work that may go ahead should these reservoirs come to fruition will actually look at how we do that in the round overall, because you're right, if you look at the potential map, a lot of Huntingdonshire will be on sea or under the sea. That's not what we would want for our communities and our residents. So I very much look forward to seeing how this unfolds over time. I can see Councillor Wakeford signalling to come in. Councillor Wakeford.
Thank you. I think there is a little that I or imagine anyone around the table would disagree with in what Councillor Davenport-Ray has said characteristically clearly. There isn't a recommendation 3 to take a delegation to nationalise Anglia Water, and that isn't, of course, what we can do locally. But colleagues in Westminster may have heard the suggestion. But the point around bearing all of that in mind in our response is well taken. And it is why this infrastructure is so critical, as the leader rightly says, because it's not merely that there's too much water in some places and too little in others. There's too much and too little in the same places at different times, and we need the infrastructure to help us manage that too.
Let me come to Councillor Ferguson.
Yay, sorry. So I share Councillor Davenport Ray's concern. This isn't the first time I've seen this. I also sit on the Regional Flood and Coastal Committee, which is the interface between local authorities and the Environment Agency, and this came in front of us about a year ago. And I think it would be easy to underestimate the technical challenges of building a large reservoir in the Fens, which is something that's not been done before. And as Councillor Davenport Ray rightly points out, it's an area that is at definite risk of flooding as a result of climate change. If you look at, we have a new government, which is good news, I think. But if you look at the extent to which the previous government has underfunded the Environment Agency and has no plan for renewing flood defences in the Fens, which is prone naturally to flooding, I think it's going to be a huge challenge to keep that area free of water. So hopefully, I support the need for a reservoir, so we stop over extracting from chalk aquifers. But I think this is going to be a massive challenge, and I've not seen anything, neither in the consultation documents or as a professional, that convinces me that this is going to be an easy project to fulfill. So I'd like to see a lot more technical detail. If you look on the Fens Reservoir pages, you can see lots of pretty pictures of leisure activities, which are a fantastic asset, I think, for that area of the country, which has under-resourced with open spaces which people can access as well. So I'd support that, support the need for better sources of water. But you think, and the thing that makes me think very hard about this is it's going to take 2 or 3 years to fill this reservoir up. So it's a massive, massive undertaking, and I'd welcome seeing more technical details because I'm slightly sceptical.
Clara, can I bring you back in? I don't expect you to comment on sort of the political comments that have been made, but you may want to comment on some of the technical items that we've raised just to help us make our recommendations.
Thank you, Chair, and through you. Clearly, this is a planning process, so we will be bound to considerations that are limited to the planning process. What I will say is our role as HDC will be to provide technical input across a range of matters that include landscape, ecology, for example, heritage, where it impacts heritage. Clearly, as part of the wider process, the DCO, it is a public inquiry to all intents and purposes, and clearly anybody can participate that, and certainly some of the comments tonight you may wish to consider how they may be presented through those routes rather than through the technical channels. To your point, Councillor Ferguson, I think that's a very good question, and part of the rationale for taking this multi-consultation approach is to include the public at every stage, so that as we start to get the feedback from the technicals, that will start to shape the technical drawings that you hopefully will have in front of you next year. But if we look inside the timeline for delivery of these reservoirs themselves, the Fens Reservoir is projected to come online at the earliest 2036, which is still quite some time from now. So again, hopefully that sets the scene in terms of the scale of this project, but also to being the realistic prospect is that this won't be online before 2036, which is another 12 years from now.
Councillor Wakeford's indicating then if there are no more questions, I'll move to the recommendation.
Just that I'm not hearing any concerns or contrary suggestions to us proceeding with the delegations we've got. We've obviously had a discussion, only slightly tongue in cheek about aspects arising from this, but our Chief Planning Officer makes very helpful comments as to the kind of different stages of this process and scope for input, and of course we'll pick up to the extent we can appropriately comments made around the table. But I propose, Leader, we move to a vote on this and move on.
Thank you very much, Councillor Wakeford. So you have 2 recommendations which are detailed in your paper. I'm not going to read them all from start to finish because you've got them in front of you and they will be on the public website. But in essence, the first recommendation is to authorise the Chief Planning Officer in consultation with the Leader and Executive Councillor for Economy, Regeneration and Housing to prepare and submit the comments for the current second non-statutory consultation. And the second part is to delegate authority to the Chief Planning Officer to take all associated action necessary in the interest of the efficient and timely conduct of our compliance with that consultation and with feeding that process through. Can I have a show of hands in favour of those recommendations? Okay, thank you. That's unanimous. In which case, then, thank you very much. We can say good night to Clara. We'll let her go. Thank you very much for sharing that presentation with us. And thank you very much, Councillor Wakeford, who's on notice probably for at least the next couple of items. So that takes us then back into the main body of the agenda. And from this point on, we'll resume the agenda in the order that it is published. So we return to item 3, which is the Market Towns Programme Summer Update. And this is Councillor Wakeford to take us through that update.
Thank you, Chair. One down, 2 to go. This is our regular quarterly update of the Market Towns programme. Colleagues are quite well acquainted with the details and developments for all sorts of reasons, not least award-related ones. I'm not proposing to run through in great detail what's in the report. Colleagues will have read it, but are familiar with it. In any case, rather in the way I didn't take scrutiny through it in enormous detail, though I gathered there was a football match they wanted to hurry back home for instead. So I didn't take that too personally. The particular recommendations that I would signpost here are twofold. One is to formally confirm and endorse the extension of the Shopfront Grant Scheme on a district-wide basis. Colleagues will recall that the money for this was very specifically for the market towns, and the money we found for St Neots was supplementary to that because it was for the market towns of Huntingdon, St Ives and Ramsey initially, and we have had a good go of advertising shopfront grants and distributing those across those market towns and St Neots as well, where we were able to find additional funding. We have got to the point where we can demonstrate sufficiently that we've used the money for its intended purpose, that we've been able to agree with the combined authority to help use the remainder up on a more flexible district-wide basis as well. So we weren't able to do this initially, but we are taking the opportunity to do it now we've created that opportunity at the latter stage of the project. The second recommendation in the paper is to delegate authority to enable us to move money around within the project budgets a little more flexibly as we approach deadlines and make more progress through the project. For example, as works are ongoing in St Neots, the need for contingencies dissipates associated with those works as the risks don't materialise, and so on. So this is a broad sort of flexibility delegation to move money within the programmes between lines as I've described. The paper itself leads on Ramsey, where there is more work ongoing and is going to become an increasing focus of the project as we approach public consultation of various forms later this summer around some of our works there. The report also touches on updates that I won't run through item by item in Huntingdon and St Ives. However, it's probably worth just flagging with respect to St Neots, not least because that's where a fair amount of scrutiny discussion was focused. We've got the updates as laid out around the progress on the Priory Centre and the planning application under consideration there. We've talked about briefly the Old Falcon work is progressing, and then the town centre improvements. The work there is progressing well, but there was scrutiny discussion about the discovery, unfortunately, of an iron main under the Market Square, which has not slowed us from the project timescale, but has certainly limited our ability to meet our ambition of beating the timescale enough to enable a completely finished Market Square by the November date that the Town Council would need to undertake the Christmas light switch on events as normal. So we'll have about 2/3 of the square clear as best we can judge. And so there is scope for all sorts of events that the Town Council are working out plans for to continue festivities around the Christmas season in St Neots, but they won't have the whole of the Market Square available. Just cantering down the scrutiny comments in our appendix in section 10, we touched upon in discussion the reasons why there were a number of unsuccessful applications for the shopfront grants from one of our market towns, but provided reassurance that there wasn't a broader issue or lack of engagement from the town in question there. We also provided assurance to questions that about whether the funding that we are proposing to provide through Huntingdon Town Council to support the expansion of the Cromwell Museum wouldn't be available for the Town Council to sell for profit subsequently. So I was happy to reassure that how we contractualise the grant agreements and so on there would preclude that possibility. And we discussed the planning application position with respect to the Priory Centre in St Neots as well, and discussed how, while at one level it was unfortunate there had been objections, at another, given the significance of the project, it would have been rather surprising had there not been. And of course, the fact that the District Council is a local planning authority and is also leading work does not change the fact that we are liable to exactly the same planning rules as everybody else, and that is right and proper. And the objections, I think, help provide public confidence of that. We're of course working through those, and we gave assurance about that and the fact the significant majority of the works on the Priory Centre don't require planning permission anyway. There were other points in scrutiny report that colleagues will have read through, so I'm not going to read every single one of them out, but they strike me as the key ones. So very happy to take any particular comments or questions, but I think this is otherwise motoring on as we are all aware.
Thank you very much, Councillor Wakeford. Councillor Pitt.
Thank you. Thank you for a good summary, and there's a delightful quantity of information in the agenda this month. In Ramsey, I think when the first conversation started about a shop in a box, I was a little bit sceptical. I didn't quite understand what it was and wasn't sure if anyone really knew what that was going to be. But what's set out in the agenda pack and the plans and vision statement is genuinely really exciting to see. And I think, here anecdotally, that the people, locally in the area share that excitement. So I really hope that does bear fruit, because I think it's exactly the sort of aspirational, transformational change that all of our towns and villages, would really welcome. So that is absolutely brilliant to see that coming to life. There's mention of a living wall, I think in St Ives. Just to share, in Wisbech, there was a project called the Vertical Garden, which is essentially the same thing that I understand was really successful. So if you're not already in touch with the people involved in that, I'd recommend giving them a call. And even if it went really badly, they can maybe shed some light on it. So there's an organisation called Blackfield Creatives, who are a local arts group in Wisbech, who are heavily involved in that. And I think that could be a really good touch point to sort of get some tips. I'm also really excited to see the boutique cinema being discussed as a possibility in Huntingdon. The report sets out that that's not without its challenges, and as someone who's set up a little cinema club in St Neots, I can wholeheartedly agree that it's not easy. People love to say they'll go to the cinema. Actually, creating something at that scale is really challenging, but if it can be made to work, I think it'd be a fantastic addition to the cultural landscape of our district. So I think when we first took over 2 years ago, there was lots of bits of ideas and it all felt quite fragmented. And I think at the moment, the Market Towns programme really feel like it's blossoming into some really concrete, exciting and deliverable plans. So thanks to you and the team for all the work on it. And I won't talk about St Neots for once, but lots of exciting things happening there as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Pitt. That's what I'd hear you say, because I know you're very passionate about St Neots, but I agree with you. There's lots of really exciting things happening right across the Market Towns programme. Councillor Wakeford, and then I'll go to Councillor Taylor.
Thank you. I was waiting for the but there, Councillor Pitt, but it didn't come. Thank you for all of that, including the tip about the local living wall. I just wanted to underline really on the cinema project in Huntingdon. As the report sets out, this is early stage. It is a matter that we anticipated would be of interest, which is why we've made reference to it to be transparent about those discussions. But we're being equally transparent that there would be challenges of a significant sort, as Councillor Pitt flags, not least also around funding and investment into it. So they're conversations rather than anything more concrete. But absolutely, I share that interest. And we've had positive feedback from a number of businesses as well in Huntingdon who see this as helping contribute to the draw of the evening economy in Huntingdon, which is an area we are wishing to work on. So I'm similarly excited, but wanted to just ensure we had those caveats heard.
Thank you. Councillor Taylor, and then I'll go to Councillor Davenport-Ray.
Thank you, Chair. I too want to touch on two things in Ramsey, and sorry, it's going to be Shop in the Box again, and St Ives, strangely enough, the living wall. So we have critical considerations within the Shop in the Box in Ramsey, and one of them that I'm looking at is the water and toilet facilities not considered necessary due to proximity of facilities within Town Council Civic Centre. I'm just thinking what type of trades would be using Shop in a Box, and if food trade is something that would be considered, and if so, is it, having no hand washing facilities, is this going to be an issue? I mean, I'm not sure how street food traders, use this through, hygiene and what we know that we need to use within in ratings with our food ratings. So do you want me to carry on or? Okay.
This avoids me forgetting. Thank you, Councillor Taylor. So I think there's a good point. The proximity point is important as well, given the location. As colleagues who know Ramsey are aware that there are potentially facilities, not least the new civic hub immediately adjacent. But I think the precise uses of the shops in a box, I need to work out how to pluralise them. Yes. I think that's one of the points that we are taking consultancy advice on and looking into further, and would be subject to discussion over the summer, including wider consultation input. So I don't think we've fixed ourselves to any particular answer there, but you're absolutely right. There are certain uses that have greater requirements for facilities linked to hygiene. We certainly don't want to be proposing something that doesn't meet hygiene and environmental standards regulations. Councillor Ferguson would be having serious words with me, I'm quite sure. So absolutely take the point. There's a point we're going to reflect upon, and I don't have a singular answer at this earlier stage.
Councillor Taylor?
Thank you, Chair. So when we're looking at the leasing and the renting out of Shop in the Box, who's actually going to be providing that process for the people that are wanting it, because it's got to have to be an easy process, and who determines what lease it's going to be and when it goes up? Sorry if it's a bit too forward, but sort of getting my commercial head on here.
No. I mean, they're sensible questions, which of course the team is across, and we're reflecting upon options and exploring. The funding is substantially from the combined authority. It comes to us, but then we have options around what we can do. I don't want to preempt any decisions that we haven't yet taken, or any agreement that might not have been reached as yet with partners like the town council, but there are different options that might involve, as close as possible, working locally with the town council in Ramsey, as we've done extremely productively with the town council in St Neots. So that's not not an answer to your question, Councillor Taylor, but we're certainly reflecting upon the options, because you're absolutely right. It's important to consider these technical points extremely carefully.
Thank you, Chair. My last one. So we're going to go over to St Ives now. Cattle Market, Livermore. Councillor Pitt's just picked up on this, and I'm really glad to say that he's given you some pointers there with people, a group in Ramsey, a group in Wisbech that can give us some pointers on that, because I think my main concern, and it's really good to see that members have pinpointed this corrugated fence as an issue. So we're getting our members really involved with this, as we should do. So my real concern with the Livermore, love them. I love the B bus stops that you see, but we've got to get it right, because what we don't want to do is produce something when it's living and then it dies. You know, we want to make sure that we're maintaining it. We want to make sure that we've got the irrigation going to it. So it's really good. Thank you, Councillor Pitt, for that pointer. So if we're going to do something like this, let's get it right.
And I think in the current climate, we won't necessarily have a lack of water, but yeah, I take your point. Councillor Wakeford.
Yeah, just briefly on that. So absolutely questions around ongoing maintenance, because plants do need tending to, as I've learnt the hard way, with my own indoor pot plants over the years. That is a matter we are absolutely in a discussion about with the town council and local partners. So we would clearly need a confident answer to that, and you know, not just kind of commitments up front, but confidence as to the deliverability of that, in order for us to proceed with this project. But no final decision's been made on this, but we are optimistic we can come to a solution there.
So colleagues, unless there are any more comments or questions, sorry, Councillor Davenport, I thought I'd seen you indicate.
About a year ago, I was in the St. Neots Museum, and they had a display about the early 1960s project by St. Neots Urban Council, I think it was called at that point, to revitalize the town centre of St. Neots. And some of the obvious objectives of that scheme was, how can we make this easiest for cars? Can we build a ring road? How many multi-story car parks can we build? And so there's obvious objectives that they're trying to achieve there. Luckily, there were some history lovers in St. Neots at the time that ensured only about a quarter of it happened. But on Monday, I was at the junction of the High Street and Huntingdon Street, where they're just finishing up on some of the work there. And I got to the junction and realized today is the first time I've ever been able to walk safely in a structured way across this intersection with any confidence. And I could see other pedestrians walking up to the spot and being quite shocked, I suppose. They got to that point, and wow, I can cross the road here. So when I think about the strides forward we've made in road user hierarchy, how much of our street scene is dedicated to not just pedestrians, but cyclists as well, it's something I was really proud of what we've been able to achieve there, a number of bike racks, and just the safety of people crossing in there, their safety taken above the ease of cars driving around our town centre.
Thank you. And of course, I laid all of that paving personally, but I'll absolutely relay that on to the team as a reflection back. And I absolutely agree with you. It is it's good to see work that we've been putting into significant deal of time and effort actually come to fruition, or starts coming to fruition. There is a lot left to do around even the town centre works, let alone the wider parts of the project, but absolutely there are elements that can feel close to finish now. I hope that's a reaction residents will have more generally as we see the as we reach the other side of more of the works. And of course, the town centre improvements are not even quite half of the total investments as part of the programme either. The Priory Centre is a major part of the investment as well. I very much hope that reactions are similar as people use the new Priory Centre, but we've got a long way to go to get there on that one. But many thanks for the feedback.
So just before I move to the recommendations, I need to say that I'm now really struggling with the branding of shops in a box because unfortunately some of us have read Dr. Seuss rather too often to our children. So all that's going through my head is socks on fox, shops in box. So that's going to probably be one of those phrases that's going to keep cropping up all evening, I suspect. We've got recommendations before us, Cabinet. We're asked to confirm and endorse the extension to the Shopfront Grant Scheme to become district-wide, and we're asked to delegate authority to the Corporate Director of Place in consultation with the Executive Councillor for Economy, Regeneration and Housing to approve and initiate delivery of the Newmarket Towns focused projects and to reallocate funding as needed. Can I have a show of hands, all in favour, please? Thank you very much. Councillor Wakeford, I think we're now over to the last item this evening from you. Oh yes, and we'd better retrieve Councillor Sanderson, who politely excused himself because he had an interest. So we'll just pause for a moment. You can take a breath, Councillor Wakeford. So I've started something now, Shops is in boxes, for those that didn't pick that up on the microphone, selling sockses, yeah.
There's a shop near me called Frocks in a Box.
So frocks in a box. I can see we've started a bit of a marketing trend, so I'm hoping any of those thinking that they might like to trade from a box shop in Ramsey might decide that they would like to capitalise on that, but I'm hoping that the owners of the Dr. Seuss franchise are not duly offended. Councillor Sanderson, welcome back. You'll probably now wonder what we're talking about. We'll catch you up after the meeting. We're on to item 4, which is the Local Authority Housing Fund Round 3 and Councillor Wakeford's last item.
Thank you. The end is in sight, colleagues. This is a report that I took to scrutiny, so I'm speaking to it now, but it has Councillor Ferguson's name at the top of it, as it does mine. We might as well have drawn lots, I think, on this one. The report is hopefully relatively straightforward. It was received as such, I think, by scrutiny. This is seeking to confirm our participation in Local Authority Housing Fund Round 3 in order to facilitate the acquisition of just a relatively small number of homes compared to the larger Round 1 we were involved in, so just 4 homes under the Afghan Citizens Resettlement Scheme. We are seeking delegation to enable us to accept the money, engage in the contracts and so on as necessary, and to understand that as part of that we would be committing to provide support to the residents ourselves as a backstop through the community team or through another body or other partners, but we flagged that the partner that we've used to provide that support to the first round house occupants in our area at Peterborough City Council, they are at capacity, and so they wouldn't be taking this on as well themselves. So we're flagging that there be a backstop of HDC, albeit there are other groups that we can work with. And we're also taking a delegation to enable us to take advantage of further similar schemes as they might arise. As I say, at scrutiny, this was received, I think it's fair to say, fairly straightforwardly. We clarified that one of the 4 units would be transitory short-term accommodation, and one of them would be for permanent tenancies. So it'd be acquisition of all 4, even though the occupants of one of them would be on a more short-term basis. And we reassured that we weren't just sort of crossing our fingers and hoping that local volunteer groups who we've worked with the round one occupants might be prepared to be helpful as well. With round four, we reassured those discussions had happened, and there was a measure of confidence about capacity of some of the community groups locally as well. I think finally, I'd just comment, because otherwise it will be an inevitable question. Eagle-eyed or mathematically minded councillors with awareness of the local housing market spotted that the sum of money we would be receiving from government on this is not going to stretch to the acquisition of 4 properties in total in Huntingdonshire. So this would be a contribution towards those, and housing associations would be with their own resources contributing to that as well, making up the shortfall, but this is making it more attractive and possible for them to acquire units. I'll stop there.
Thank you very much, Councillor Wakeford. Are there any comments or questions? Councillor Sanderson, then Councillor Pitt.
Thank you, Chair. 3.2, it says we're currently waiting on the outcome of a board meeting in June 2024 to confirm whether Stonewall are able to work with the council. Do we know the outcome of that meeting? Is it positive?
We may well do, and Stonewater are under have been reflecting on that. I would need to defer to our officer team on the specifics of those conversations, but we're certainly confident there would be a provider prepared to assist us.
Thank you, and Councillor Pitt.
I'll resist the temptation to make a longer speech on sort of geopolitics, but I'm just really delighted that we are proceeding with enthusiasm to make provision for the Afghan Citizens Resettlement Scheme. I think it's a really important scheme, and absolutely delighted that HTC is behind that. Thank you.
Thank you, and Councillor Taylor.
Yeah, you're back on. So within the report, it's saying that we could have, I don't want to say a problem, but obviously Stonewater Housing Association don't do the temporary accommodation. So we are looking, I can't find it now, but we are looking at another social housing provider. Now, and if that doesn't work, we would look at Places for People. So we've got 2 contenders, basically. Would we be looking, so these are social housing providers, would we be looking for temporary accommodation in private temporary accommodation? Would that be something that we would look at if these 2 failed?
So I believe that the terms of the funding here are around the acquisition of units. So I think not directly, but we would be keeping options for that under review, particularly if there were flexibilities in funding as it comes through. But I think that Plan A, per the purpose of the funding, is around the acquisition of units, I think.
As there are no other people signalling, then you've got a series of recommendations in the paper. Again, I'm not going to read them out. They're in the paper on pages 133 and 131. Can I have a show of hands of all those in favour? Thank you very much. So we will be proceeding. Thank you very much, Councillor Wakeford. You'll be pleased to know that you haven't got the last item to deliver. That honour falls to me. So I will take us then through the last item of the evening, which is the productivity plan. So we took this through overview and scrutiny this month. You'll know that the background to this is that we are expected to have a productivity plan. And as a council, we have a requirement to do that. We were required to do that in a request on the 16th of April from the then Minister for Local Government, Simon Hoare. We've in fact complied and met the timescales that are required, which would be that we would have to submit for the 19th of July. So if this evening you are content to approve the productivity plan, we would meet that deadline. But what we've also done is gone ahead of that, and as well as the productivity plan, we have also taken the step of producing a continuous improvement plan, which signals very clearly this council's intent to not rest on its laurels, but to continue to push forward at every opportunity to do as much as it possibly can, and working towards ways of transforming the services that we provide to the public and making sure that we're ever efficient and we're ever adept at the changing marketplaces in which we have to work to serve our residents. So you have both of those plans before you tonight. I'm just going to move forward and just remind you of the comments that we had from overview and scrutiny. Bear with me a moment, I've just got to go back in the paper. But I hope you'll agree that I think the plans are actually incredibly straightforward to read, which I think is always very, very welcome. Overview and scrutiny had to say, and I've gone past it twice. Bear with me a second. Can never find it when you're looking for it. Thank you. Mrs. Jablonski is going to help me out. Oh, thank you very much. Overview and scrutiny said, and she's got a mouse. I've got all mod cons here. So overview and scrutiny. Councillor Martin wanted to be assured about our benchmarking and wanted to be assured that it was against industry standards and neighbouring authorities, and we were able to provide that assurance. He was also keen that we looked at increased productivity and not at the expense of quality. And again, we were able to provide that assurance. We then had comments from Councillor Blackwell, who was concerned about the lack of numerical targets. Again, we were able to reassure her that in the key performance indicators, there are in fact very clear metrics, but they're not detailed in this report. It's the nature of there are a suite of documents that relate and point to each other. So in fact, all of our key performance indicators have metrics that we're able to report back on. Councillor Pickering observed that there was an issue with some of the links contained within the document, and it was noted, and those links have been updated. Councillor Wells asked a question regarding the 4-day week model used in South Cambridgeshire. And he heard back that the council was constantly monitoring best practice and evidence of what works, and would continually review the opportunities that were in front of us to be more effective. Councillor Corley specifically asked that we were not going to reduce residents' abilities to contact the council. And again, we were able to reassure him that that was not our intent. And I think it was to do with the wording in the document and depending on how you read the particular wording. So we gave him that assurance. We also heard about the artificial intelligence opportunities that were being investigated that would in fact assist people in getting the services and support they needed in a really timely fashion. So those were the comments from overview and scrutiny. I'm very happy now to take any comments or questions before we move to the recommendations. I can see Councillor Davenport-Ray indicating.
Thank you, Chair. The requirement for councils to produce a productivity plan and submit it to central government was at the direction of Minister for Local Government, Simon Hoare. As of today, we have a different minister responsible for local government. That makes me wonder about part 4 of our submission. So we were asked, what are the barriers preventing activity that government can help to reduce or remove? Based on that change at ministerial level, is there anything that you would change about our response and what we want to say to central government?
I'm actually going to bring our Chief Exec in, because I think actually she's really well placed to answer that.
Thank you. I think a couple of things. One, the productivity plan is a living document. It's not set in stone. So actually, as we don't know what tomorrow is going to bring in detail with the King's Speech, and it's something that as we see new guidance or new legislative requirements, we will continually update that and be reflecting upon that. And whilst there has been a change in government, I think it's highly likely with the implementation of Oflog and the productivity plans that councils will still be held to efficiency and effectiveness targets, because that's linked to that longer term funding of the model of local government. And I think there is an expectation that we will continue to drive through that performance in order to provide capacity to deliver more. But definitely a living document which will be continually updated.
Yeah, and if I may, just before I bring Councillor Taylor in, I think the really important thing is actually, although this was a requirement, you'll know from the presentation we've just given to overview and scrutiny that actually we are proactively taking other steps to look at benchmarking how we perform above and beyond anything that's been required, because actually it's good for this council and it's better for our residents because it means we are consistently looking to improve, enhance and get best value out of everything we do. So I agree, it's a living document. That ask may change because already there are some indications in the letter that we've had today from the new Deputy Prime Minister that came to council leaders, indicating that one of the things that might be looked at might be a longer term settlement for local government, and it iterated how important local government is. I think that's incredibly welcome at a time when we are the frontline delivery for an awful lot of wider national objectives. So I look forward to seeing what comes next. But at every opportunity to ask for the things that actually enable us to do more for residents, we will be on the front foot and we will certainly be asking. Let me bring in Councillor Taylor.
Thank you, Chair. It's on a similar sort of theme, but it's at 2.3. The Minister has been clear that individual plans will not be rated or scored, which is great because that's just not the pressure that local government want, and that plans are being commissioned to provide an understanding of what is happening across the sector. I think my thoughts on this is what are they're looking at the understanding of what's happening, all for efficiencies, definitely. This is public money that we're using, and we do not want to be wasting it unnecessarily. But it's just knowing that understanding, their understanding of what is happening across the local authorities and what do they propose to do with that. Is this saying we are making those efficiencies, we are doing the best we can with the public funds that we're getting through council tax, through the government settlement, and are they going to say you're doing well, and actually what we might do is give you some more money? So that would be good to see what the outcome of that would be.
Say just before I bring our chief exec in, spookily that I wish you'd been at the district councils network when I had the opportunity to actually raise that issue directly with the new chief executive of Oflog, who came to address council leaders. And actually I made the point that I don't want this to be the stick with which we beat councils. I want this to be the leverage that says this works well, we've seen it working here, what can we all be doing better and what can we be learning from each other? And I think that's the opportunity that we all want to strive for. But this also speaks to this council's desire for continuous improvement, and you've seen that in the peer challenges and you've seen that in our approach over the last 2 years. So I think there is a level of scepticism about maybe what an agenda may have been. I think we have to see where that goes, but I'm hoping it's used for positive benefit for the public, and that's something we will be speaking loudly and clearly to. Can I bring you in, Michelle?
Thank you very much. And I think just to follow on from Councillor Taylor, they are not, there is definitely not an intention to score or mark us or as your phrase, beat us with a stick. It was very much the publication of a productivity plan should inspire us to look at what our fellow colleagues in our local government family are doing. Often we have really good examples of best practice, but an example I gave today when I was part of a consultation for LGA Comms was it's about that pipeline of content. So we're all really busy and we've got really good stuff we're doing, but often the onus is on the council then to provide a case study. Our officers are really busy, and the choice of doing something as an outcome or doing a case study for the LGA, the case study for the LGA often goes to the bottom of the pile, even though we want to share and talk about our good practice. It's just that resource is finite and what's next and what's urgent to do. Therefore, as best in the world, as much as we try collectively to produce the content for others to learn from, we struggle. Something like the productivity plan is really, because we had to do it, has really forced the issue. And I think it will be really interesting post 19th of July to have a reflection to see who's doing what, where we can, why reinvent the wheel. If there's good practice out there that we don't know about or we haven't reflected, what can we pinch? What can we adapt? And I think that also is in line with the continuous improvement plan, and actually just creating the capacity where we've got a finite resource, where we can demonstrate and bring about more efficiency. It means we can do more. It's back to the 80-20 figure that we talk about regularly, around what's our core service, our bread and butter, and how do we create the 20% to be more innovative. And it's about being able to capture that and realign our resources so that they are fully in line with the corporate objectives that you have all set for us to deliver for you.
Thank you very much. Unless there are any other comments, then I'm going to move to the recommendations. You've already given some comments, but the two recommendations are specifically to comment on and approve the productivity plan that we will then submit to the Department for Levelling Up, although it's now got a new title, so you can tell how long a couple of days are in government. And the second item is to comment on and endorse the Council's continuous improvement plan. Can I have a show of hands in favour, please? Thank you. And again, that's unanimous. That brings us to the end of this evening's agenda. Can I thank you all? Can I wish those online good night? And thank you very much.